What's up, Penn Staters? Thanks for tuning into the Football Letter podcast. This week, we welcome superstar volunteer leader Zach Schroeder. Zach is a 2004 Penn State graduate, and he serves as the president of our Oregon chapter. Oregon, of course, nowadays, Big Ten country. Zach also played in the Blue Band for 3 years. We're going to talk about his experience as a Penn State student, why he wanted to stay connected to Penn State as an alumnus, and how the Oregon chapter unites Penn Staters on football game days and year-round. Zach Schroeder, welcome to the Football Letter podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, John. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We were talking before we went on air here. You said you grew up in or around Chester County, so you grew up in Pennsylvania. How did Penn State become the school for you?
I am a third generation Penn Stater. My grandparents met at Penn State. My grandmother was part of the famous 500, the first group of women to live on campus at State College. And my grandparents met, married in 1953, had my dad a few years later. And my dad went to Penn State, met my mom there. And Penn State, ever since I was born and ever since I was little, has been a huge part of my family and a part of my life. No surprise, I started going to Penn State football games when I was very young. I believe my first game was in 1990. I would have been 9 years old. And we joined the Big Ten like the next year, and I was at those games as well. So Penn State, it was always a part of my life. Growing up, it was just a ubiquitous part of our falls, going up and seeing family in State College. And when it was time to pick schools, Penn State was number one on the list, and there was no way I was going to not even consider it. And then when I got in, it was an absolute no-brainer.
So once you got into Penn State, it sounded like your dream school. What were some of the early impressions or just experiences that you remember as a student that said, yeah, I wanted to pick Penn State and I'm reaffirmed in my decision and this is what I wanted it to be?
I love the big time atmosphere of Beaver Stadium and college football. And when I was going to those games as a little kid, I was just like, this is so much fun. I love all the people. The atmosphere is electric. It's addicting. You can't get enough of it. And I actually went to Penn State Berks for my freshman year. And because I was an astronomy major, I got to go to State College, University Park in my sophomore year. And the contrast was just so stark. Every time I would visit University Park when I was a student at Berks, I was reminded about how much I really liked University Park and all the people up there. And I just couldn't wait to get there. And sophomore year was the first year of being like, oh yeah, this is really where I belong. I'm making a lot of friends. I'm being a part of a giant community. Everyone is just so happy to be here. State College is a vibrant place to live, as my parents and grandparents showed. At University Park is a great place to meet people and do a bunch of diverse activities. It was just absolutely a joy to be there with all those people.
We mentioned it in the intro, you played in the Blue Band for 3 years. You played the trumpet. How did being part of the Blue Band and being part of that family and that community, how did it shape your experience as a student?
It was the best part. Like, that's the one thing I want to talk about first, was being in the Blue Band. You want to, like, if you weren't on the football team, maybe it's the next best part of being part of game day. I didn't join the Blue Band until my junior year. Classes and schedules didn't work out the first time, or the first full year at University Park. But once I got into the band, it was the most fun time. You can't beat it. Like, everyone is so excited when the band marches by pregame. Everyone's excited to see the band on the field. And when I was at Penn State, the team was really bad for 2 of those years. And Dr. Bundy used to say that when the team is bad, the band gets more attention. So we got a lot of attention those years when Penn State was not getting it done on the wins and losses. So it was even more of a joy to be a part of the band when you were getting more eyes.
Yeah, those were some uncharacteristic lean
Yeah.
years for Penn State football in the early 2000s. I was a student when you were a student, so
That's true. Yeah.
I vividly recall those days.
So
So we asked Letterman, what is it like to run out of the tunnel on game day? Because it's a once in a lifetime feeling, it feels like on those Saturdays. Let me ask you that question. On game day, marching out of the tunnel with the Blue Band, what did it feel like?
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Okay, so my first game was, and I think this is right, Miami, Penn State. This was the game that Adam Talaferro came back and walked out of the tunnel, and that was a complete sellout. And Miami was like super good back then, so this was like getting a lot of attention. We got smoked in that game, but like the atmosphere to start was out of control. We were marching into a night game, it wasn't whiteout yet, but like you have no idea being on the field and feeling the weight of the entire din of the stadium on you. I was like, I think it was like first-ish coming out, so like within the first like handful of people. So you were like first to feel just the wall of the crowd hitting you right in the face. And those big games are just hard to beat. I mean, any night games. And then the next year was Nebraska, when we were pretty good and Larry Johnson broke out. We marched out during a night game there, and that was just otherworldly. It's really hard to describe. You have to be down there to really feel it. But I just will remember just feeling the weight of all those people screaming their lungs out on game day, and especially before a big game.
So the Blue Band being a part of Penn State for those years, why and how was it important for you? I mean, I can tell just from the enthusiasm in your voice talking about
Yeah.
your days as a student. So this will sound, it sounded like wanting to stay involved as a Penn State graduate was sort of a natural transition for you. Is that how you would describe it?
You mean what I do now, or like Blue Band to what I do now?
Yeah, so let me just rephrase. So, it sounds like you had such a wonderful experience as a Penn State student. Why was it important for you to stay connected to Penn State as an alumnus after you graduated?
Uh, it feels as natural as it was being as natural as it was growing up in a Penn State family. It's just a part of who I am. And when I moved to Oregon, and I moved here in 2014, like there was no way I wasn't going to try to find the local Penn State community and connect with them. When I moved here, so the first like football season, the first football season I was part of was 2015. Our chapter was dormant. There wasn't many activities. Our Facebook group was pretty quiet. 2016, we kicked off kind of a revamp of the chapter. We had some folks who had also moved right around my time just kind of jump on there and say like, hey, let's revive this. And I also said, yeah, let's do it. So I went to one of the first watch parties in this kind of like revamped local chapter. And from there, it was like, there's no way I'm not going to be a part of this. Like we formed a board really quickly. We restarted all of the connections with the Alumni Association. We started making connections around town on where to have watch parties. And it just felt as natural as it was when I was growing up. Like, oh, I'm a Penn Stater no matter where I am. And being a part of something even from the ground up was even more exciting because I could build something. We could build something in a way that really represented how we wanted to represent the Penn State community.
So, Zach, I'm going to throw up a couple chapter photos here on the screen, and I just wonder if you can maybe build on that previous answer in terms of what's the value of staying connected to Penn State and doing that through an alumni chapter?
I like connecting with other Penn Staters. It feels like a little piece of Pennsylvania so far from home. All the way out here, you're almost as far as you can get from Pennsylvania and still be in the continental U.S., obviously. And whenever new folks join, come to watch parties, hang out, there's always that sense of like, okay, here's a little piece of home. Here's a little piece of community that represents who I am, who I grew up with. And that sense of belonging really fits in well with Penn State. You have just so much. Again, I keep using the word joy, but we have a lot of joy when it comes to watching Penn State games and being together because it just represents a really happy time in people's lives. The football games are super fun, so there's always that element of fun too. But yeah, it's a great community to be a part of, and we get a lot of passionate people that want to come and hang out with us.
You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Zach Schroeder, president of our Oregon chapter, 2004 Penn State grad. There is Zach at Beaver Stadium with a few friends, all smiles. We were looking at some chapter photos of just photos of some chapter events and members of the group there. Zach, take us into when it's game day and you're at a watch party. What is the energy and atmosphere like, and how do you bring a little bit of Beaver Stadium to your watch parties?
Great question. So we have created a really strong relationship with the bar where we watch. Satellite Bar in North Portland. My fellow board member Matt Zellers has made really strong connections with some of the local restaurant owners, and this tavern has helped connect us with speakers and the sound system so that we can make sure we get the TVs all set up. And we make sure we play music. When the band is marching out on the field or right around game day, we're playing some of the same songs. Like during commercials, we're tossing songs up on the speakers and making sure that everybody's having a good time. The watch party also includes during certain games raffles to help fund the chapter, or we do fundraisers. We do fundraisers for local food banks. Some of your pictures there include swag from there you go, right there. That's a Sam Coffey signed soccer ball. Sam Coffey, a Portland Thorn gold medal winner, went to Penn State. She was kind enough to give us some stuff to raffle off last year for Thon. Yeah, the energy is up. I mean, and we get on the mic and we try to get people excited. Like I want to walk around and talk to everybody. So and Matt's right there in that picture to my left, in that Beaver Stadium photo. We try to keep the energy up. It's all about recreating some of the Beaver Stadium atmosphere as much as you can. And you got the game on, you got the sound on, we got a lot of space and a welcoming atmosphere. And when Penn State's doing really well and like a game that's a little late in the day, because those 9 a.m. games can be a tougher draw, we'll have a really solid atmosphere. 2 or 3 years ago, when Penn State played Auburn at Penn State and it was a whiteout, we had 100 people, which is the most people we had in the last 3 years. And that atmosphere in our bar was just amazing. It was so packed. Everyone was so excited to be hanging out with one another. And that is exactly what we want to bring. We want to bring an electric, exciting atmosphere.
So you said a couple of things that were interesting, Zach, where there's a lot of energy, but you also want to get around and talk to people. I imagine maybe there are some folks there you're seeing for the first time, or maybe some newer faces. How do you see your role on game day at a chapter watch party in terms of, wanting to inform people, wanting them to feel welcome, but also wanting to have fun? How do you kind of approach game day as a chapter president?
Yeah, Matt and I split up duties pretty clearly. He works with the bar, he manages the music, he organizes anything around that, and I'm the welcoming committee. I like to go up and talk to new folks and just say, hey, where are you from in Pennsylvania? And all the way out here, if I say I'm from Chester County, most people don't know what that means, but when I'm at a Penn State watch party and I say I'm from Chester County, everyone knows what that means. So now we're bringing our own Pennsylvania local flavor back. So I walk up to folks, ask them where they're from in Pennsylvania. When'd you go to Penn State? When'd you move out here? And all of a sudden we're all connecting, because almost all of us are transplants if we're at a Penn State watch party. So we can connect on being from somewhere else, connecting around Penn State, connecting around wanting to give back to our Penn State community in some way, whether it's just through our presence or even some donations. But we've created a welcoming atmosphere through just having a very open arms approach to making sure that everyone feels like they're welcome when they show up to a game. Oh, sorry.
And following up, Zach, in terms of the raffles and some of the other things that you do, how do you use football in those chapter watch parties to perhaps leverage what else you're doing as a chapter, use it for fundraising? How important are those watch parties when it comes to kind of what the chapter wants to do year round?
Football is everything to us out here. I mean, I'm jealous of like East Coast chapters, to be perfectly honest, because they can pull people at any time to do something. We obviously have a smaller Penn State alumni base out here. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's just in the few thousands. And even in Portland, it's smaller. There is about 33,000 people that live out here. Football is by far the most attractive events that we throw, and when you get eyes and ears, then that is your chance to plug other things that you do. We still obviously use social media as much as possible, but the reach of just being right in front of people is a lot easier. And our raffles and our fundraisers have really benefited from those watch parties, more so than off-season events. Last year we raised $1,000 for Thon, which for our chapter is great because we've got us with our smaller base. We can only, we can hit just a different numbers, but I'm proud of what we've done. And I think we've grown lately to bring more people into off-season events, including our summer picnic, which we saw 4 Penn State students off from Oregon that are going to Penn State, which is one of the pictures, that picture with the flag right there. That was the most incoming freshmen that we had show up to a picnic, I think maybe ever. And this chapter's been restarted for 8 years. So that was a very proud afternoon for us to get folks to show up. So we're getting there. Our numbers are getting a lot better, and I'm happy to do that. And football is our jumping off point to really anything else.
Well, kind of building on this idea of you have momentum, you're keeping it. What are a couple things that the chapter has coming up, maybe early 2025, or even just in the year ahead that you've got your eye on that you're excited about?
Well, we want to do more volunteerism events, and we volunteered at the Oregon Food Bank last year. Earlier this year, and we want to grow events like that. And my hope is that we can start to plug volunteerism events that will bring people out in greater numbers. We want to use football for fundraising in the fall. We'll work on a fundraiser again that's slated for October and then maybe into November. And we've done a food drive. Actually, we've competed against Penn State Seattle for food drives where we collect non-perishable items and see between Portland and Seattle who can raise more, because obviously those two cities out here have a little bit of a history. So I can report that we've won 2 years in a row. So we got to keep our streak alive. So if Penn State Seattle, you're listening to this, we're coming at you again this year.
I love it. Competitive nature, James Franklin, one of the 4 core values, compete in everything you do. Volunteerism, the idea or the belief in service. There are a lot of Penn Staters who they graduate and they want to stay connected to Penn State, but you took that extra step of being a volunteer leader. How did you, was that a natural decision for you? Like, what inspired you to just actually take that next step when you were in Oregon to say, let's revive this chapter? Kind of what was the motivating force for you to go the extra step and become a volunteer leader?
I'd like to say it was conscious, but it just felt innate and it felt natural. I grew up in a family that, I am the oldest of 3 brothers, and we are all Boy Scouts, and we espouse a lot of leadership activities and qualities. My dad is a Boy Scout as well, and leadership is one of the things that you learn and grow in that program. And it was as natural as a fit as possible. And also being out here at that time, I was still relatively new to the area and knew that it would be a really great way to not just give back, but also to create and build my own community of my own friends and create a life out here that would really reflect who I am. And I had not really had or given myself opportunities for leadership positions in a life before I moved here. And I was thinking to myself, well, this is as good of a fit as any. It's Penn State. It's in a city that you're starting to like. Why not get involved? And there was a board of us it was 5 to start. And we became really close friends over the process. And now it's a board of 3. We had two folks move, but it really solidified not just like what I wanted to give back, but also that I was making community in a home that I was starting to like.
You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are talking with Zach Schroeder. So, Zach, I want to get your reaction to Oregon joining the Big Ten. But before I do that, just one more question on becoming involved with the chapter. We have a lot of Penn Staters out there who are involved with the local chapter or volunteer in some other way. What's one piece of advice you have for a Penn Stater who, they want to get involved, but maybe they just haven't taken that first step yet?
I say especially for chapters whose enrollment is a lot lower, or alumni base is a lot lower. Just do it. If you are interested, there is always space for you. I can't speak to any of the East Coast cities or regions that have more people, but I will say out here, we are always looking for people to help. And we are, and especially in the last year or so, have been a little bit more vocal in Portland about making sure everyone knows that if you want to help, we're ready. And I think that if you want to start with something small with your chapter, maybe a great way to be involved is not think that you need to take a huge role, but really say, okay, how about if I'm responsible for, getting items for a raffle on game day, or I will help with the organization of a volunteer event, or I will run the social media account for a week or two while the person who normally does it is out. It doesn't have to be big. Sometimes small things can really make a difference. And in this case, and with my experience, we could use help in literally any way. So if you're in Oregon and you want to help us out, hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Instagram. We're ready to take you. And I can't imagine that even in bigger places that they don't want help. If you're interested and if you're motivated, there's room for you.
All right, you heard it, Penn Staters. There are 3,000 Penn State alumni living in Oregon. Last we checked, updated our alumni maps. And so Zach Schroeder, open invite to join the Oregon chapter. I'm hearing that right, Zach?
Get out of here. Let's go. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of let's go, what was your reaction to Oregon becoming a Big Ten team? How hyped are you for that?
Oh, man. I'm so excited. Truly, my first thought was, well, I can't wait when Penn State plays in Eugene and it's only a 2-hour drive for me to go to a game instead of a however long flight to get to State College. And not just that, I mean, Penn State's playing all up and down the West Coast for the foreseeable future. I'm going to LA for the Penn State USC game with my dad and some friends, and it's a 2-hour flight as opposed to I don't even know how long it takes to get to Beaver Stadium anymore from Portland, but I'm thrilled. From a selfish perspective, I'm over the moon.
Yeah, Oregon will visit Beaver Stadium, I believe, next season, and then it'll be
27.
Yeah, 2027. So it'll be
sorry,
here before.
yeah. Oregon is going to Penn State in 2005. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll be out there in 3 years, and it'll be fun. You can be our football letter correspondent if that sounds okay to you.
I'm in. Let's go. I'm happy to help.
All right, you're tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We're talking with Zach Schroeder, just kind of shifting gears here a little bit. Zach, what was your favorite class that you took at Penn State?
I was a computer engineering major, which meant a lot of my classes were hard. So favorite was tough. And in fact, in your little roundup outline, that was the question I kind of tripped over the most. The one I remember the most fondly was probably Sociology 5, I believe, with I believe the professor's name was Clemente. And it was just a great class on storytelling, sociology. And I just remember being really taken with the stories that professor was telling. And I think I got that right. I think it's Soc 5. And it was a really popular class to take before that professor retired. But that's the one I remember the most. And I think that that's probably my favorite.
Zach, we might have been in the same class because Frank Clemente, Sociology 05, 005 was Sam Richards. He and Sam Richards are kind of on the same level in that, Frank Clemente retired, I mean, probably maybe a decade ago, but he was wildly popular. That's a Frank Clemente reference on the podcast. That's great, Zach.
I love it.
yeah, I think it was in Chambers Building if we want to get more meta, but that was
I was in Forum for that one. And
okay.
I'm sure it moved around because it was ridiculously popular. I could only get in because I was a senior, and I had the status to get the class, because if you were a freshman or sophomore, you weren't getting in.
Yeah, that was one of those classes where even if you weren't registered for the class, you would just show up and sit in the aisles and listen to the stories. And so, yeah, great to hear. Zach, what is one or two of your favorite campus spots that either is a little underrated or might not be at the top of somebody else's list?
Campus spots.
We can go downtown. We can go.
Spots. I mean, I really like the old Creamery. Back then it was just just a little add-on to the one of the ag buildings there, right? And when you're in East and you're going to Forum, you're walking by it on your way back. So you're like, yeah, I'm getting another ice cream. Like, absolutely. This freshman 15 is not going to gain itself. I like that one. The West cookies, geez, are they going to be food related? I think they might be.
They don't have to be, but they
Uh,
seem to always be like,
yeah.
it tends to go this way.
I think when you and I were there, the hub renovation was pretty new, and that was just such a sweet spot to hang out. So none of these are underrated by any means. These are all properly rated. But I was in, I think I had a decent amount of classes at Hammond Building, and maybe it's just like I've got some syndrome of being locked in there. But one of the study halls in the lower level was actually like pretty nice. And maybe I just spent too many hours there and my memory is just completely warped. But I don't remember that. I remember that study room not being too bad.
All right. Favorite Penn State game that you've attended?
Oh, well, I was living out here at the time, but visiting back at home when Penn State upset Ohio State on the kick six, or the block six, or whatever we're nicknaming it. Um, uh, so that's the number one because it was obviously the biggest upset. I was also at when Penn State beat Ohio State in with the what's that? Was that 08, I think? Kind of a we're back, or maybe it was 05. I can't remember off the top of my head. But a couple of upsets Ohio State for sure. I was at Penn State played Notre Dame. That was a thrill as well. And my favorite one from when I was in the blue band was when Larry Johnson broke with 2,000 yards. Like Penn State was beating the ever living daylights out of Michigan State, and it was just a matter of when Larry Johnson was going to get the rushing crown there, and that was so exciting. Being on the field for that after the game, we were just over the moon. That was so cool.
Yeah, I think Larry Johnson would have gained like 3,500 yards if he had actually played like all 4 quarters that season. But like Paterno would pull him out, like because the team was up by.
Yeah.
So
it was great.
Yeah, no, go ahead with that thought, Zach.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and especially the games like at home, like we were just begging for him to play more often, and especially that game against Michigan State, didn't he? He got that record, I think, in the first half or maybe early in the second, and it was just awesome to be there, part of it.
So I was getting ready to wrap up the interview, Zach, but you mentioned the blue band, and I feel like maybe just one or two more questions, if that's okay with you. What we are obviously huge fans of the blue band. They'll play at our away game pep rallies. They are up at like 5 or 6 a.m. on game day. Were there lessons that you learned being in the blue band that you have found have stuck with you, have served you well, just as a person and as a professional?
I learned to be myself in the blue band. I think that was the first place I felt like I could be myself, because it's not going to surprise you that we goof off a ton. And in those really long practice days and bus rides to away games and downtimes, like you're going to be really close with people. And I felt like that was the first community where I was able to kind of see myself show up and feel like, oh, this is who I am. I can be funny in the way that feels true to me. I can be close with friends in the way that I feel like is true to me. And that is I'd say that's the best lesson I've taken away. And especially, and I even applied it to being a board member out here. Like, how do I want to show up in my community? And trying to bring as much of yourself as your authentic self to wherever you are. And that was the first time where I really felt that. And it was an aha moment for me. And I don't think you could do that if you're not going to spend, we spent, 10 or, more hours together a week, each week in the fall. And you're just going to have to be yourself as much as you can, or else maybe you're not going to have as good of a time with your friends. And that was the first time I would say I really felt that.
Was there maybe a perk of being in the blue band that maybe folks would be surprised to hear or wouldn't know about? Is there like a great part about is there a great part of being part of the blue band that maybe doesn't jump out?
I don't know what it's like now, but back then you really got to be on the field a lot more. I think that they don't put the band on the field like right away after game day. So you would go down on the field with, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. So you would see the very end of a game, like from the end zone, and you're realizing how giant these football players are. And I remember one game, I think it was against Ohio State, we lost and they caught a last second touchdown and it happened right in front of us. And you're just like, that play happened so fast, I can't believe it. So the perk is like you don't have the best access, but you have some access and you are closer to the game than you would be almost in any other situation. That is a perk that you kind of don't think about too much, I think. And now maybe it's changed where they don't go down on the field as much as they used to, or they go down at different times. But that's the biggest one to me. It's like you are more up close than you would be otherwise. And like we mentioned before, like everyone knows you're going to be on the field during the start of the game and hear the crowd. Like that is, that's a perk, and that doesn't get any better than that.
Was Twizzlers a thing in the Blue Band when you were there?
Twizzlers.
They eat Twizzlers like nonstop in the state. Like, so I volunteered with the Blue Band in 2015. Dr. Gregory Drain was nice enough to allow me to do that.
Awesome.
They eat Twizzlers. Like, I've never even bothered to ask. So that Twizzlers is like a recent Blue Band tradition.
No, our thing was, and if any of my Blue Band friends watch this and get this wrong, they're gonna kill me. But I think we had a fourth quarter cookie. So like we would get lunch. So this is before the Blue Band building. We'd march with our stuff from the practice fields at the IM fields down to Bryce Jordan Center. And we'd change there, eat breakfast, lunch, whatever you want to call it, and then play at the show before the game. And you get a cookie. We'd save it for the fourth quarter. So like fourth quarter is when like all your responsibilities were done. Traveling trumpets had just happened in the third quarter. Obviously done pregame and halftime already. So it was like our little treat. So maybe that's just a trumpet thing. Maybe that was a whole band thing. But that was what we did as far as food related items went.
All right. You are tuned in and have been tuned in to the Football Letter podcast. We have been speaking with Zach Schroeder. This has been really great, catching up with you, Zach. I'm a little surprised that I haven't talked with you before. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it's just because you're in Oregon, but I feel like I want to get out to Oregon before 27. And when the football team gets out there, there's a lot going on out there.
Let's do it. Oregon's great. Come on out.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up, and I appreciate the invite. All the Penn Staters in Oregon, you've been invited by Zach. We'll wrap up the conversation with this question then, Zach. And it's sort of a broad question, but we like to throw it out and give you the last word. When you look at your time as a student, as an alumnus, as a volunteer leader, in what way has Penn State shaped who you are as a person and as a professional?
Penn State was the place where I was forced to grow into who I am now. I mentioned my kind of aha moment with finding agency in the Blue Band. I'd say that was kind of the jumping off point to, finding your authentic self over the course of your life. Of course, it's a growing process. We never figured it out in one moment. But I made Penn State my own. I met a lot of great friends that I'm still close with. You're still in fantasy leagues with people that you met in 1999 when you first started there, at least for me. But Penn State means community. It means a sense of self. It means a sense of pride. And being a volunteer leader still connects me with not just that time, but it still connects me with who I am. I want to be known as a Penn Stater. I want to be known as someone who gives back. I want to be someone who's known as someone who's proud of their community. And Penn State is just one way to bring all of that together.
Zach Schroeder, I was looking forward to this conversation. You did not disappoint. Zach Schroeder, thank you so much for stopping by the podcast. We appreciate your time and everything you're doing for Penn State and the Alumni Association. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Hey, Penn Staters, I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and we are here in West Lafayette, Indiana, for today's Big Ten matchup against the Purdue Boilermakers. I'm joined by Todd Troup. Todd is the president of our Indiana chapter. Todd, what's it like when the Nittany Lions come to town?
Oh, it's so fulfilling to see that the work that we do throughout the year, that we don't get a lot of visibility seeing the group, and then when everybody's out here, it's just great. Last night we were at Walt's Pub here in West Lafayette for the Friday night mixer. We had the Lion out here, we had cheerleaders out here, we had people coming in from all over We had people from Kentucky and Tennessee. We had a lady here from South Ireland last night. So it's awesome to see that get fulfilled.
It's amazing. And yes, we bring students on the road, right? Our cheerleaders. You all had the chance to interact with them.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. We talked with Brady Berger,
Yeah,
I believe his name is last night. He's the call guy, the one that yells, the mic man at Penn State. So last weekend, we actually traveled from Indiana to the whiteout game. And of course, you get to see them on the field, but when you're at the Friday night mixer, you get such close interaction with everybody and know that they're just students, but they're great students and they're doing great work.
Absolutely. And shout out to Amy Berger, Brady's mom, who was a high school classmate of mine. So the small world of Penn State always brings us together. Yeah. So we're out here tailgating. You have this fantastic setup, right? This is like a combination of alumni chapter and kind of family and friends for you.
Yeah. So 2016, when Penn State had that great year, both of our daughters were students at Penn State. One was a senior, one was a freshman. We got an RV. I parked in the RV lot, and somebody said, "Hey, your buddy's there," and he owns this RV. So we've been RVing with them for the last 8 years. Learned how to do this setup. We were at the whiteout last weekend, like I said, and they all decided to come out this weekend. So we just picked it up and brought it all out here.
Todd, thank you so much for all you do for the Penn State Alumni Association. We're grateful.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you guys came out to join us, and it's always great to see you guys.
Yeah. And thank you all for keeping up with us on the road at the Penn State Alumni Association here, cheering on our Nittany Lions. Thank you for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State!